They called him Rex, a 70-pound German shepherd whose nose could detect explosives from distances that would make human technology weep with envy. They called his handler Marcus Kane, a Navy SEAL whose steady hands had defused more bombs than most people had nightmares about. But on this scorching Tuesday morning in downtown Phoenix, neither of them knew they were about to face the most terrifying 15 minutes of their lives. Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from. And if this story grips your soul, please subscribe for more. The desert sun was already a merciless hammer at 8 in the morning, turning the asphalt into a shimmering lake of heat that made the air dance like liquid mercury. Downtown Phoenix was coming alive with the familiar rhythm of another workday. The streets filling with commuters who moved with the practiced efficiency of people accustomed to surviving in one of America's most unforgiving urban heat islands. Marcus Kane stood in the shadow of the federal building, his tactical vest already darkening with sweat despite the early hour. He was a man built for precision, standing 6 feet tall with the kind of lean, corded muscle that spoke of endless hours spent perfecting his craft. His face was weathered by years of desert deployments, marked by the kind of deep lines that came not from age, but from squinting into hostile suns on the other side of the world. His eyes, a pale blue that seemed almost colorless in certain light, missed nothing as they swept the bustling street before him. At his side, Rex sat with the perfect stillness that marked him as something far beyond an ordinary dog. This was a warrior in fur, a four-legged soldier whose training had cost the Navy more than most people earned in a year. His coat was a rich sable and black, his ears erect and constantly moving, cataloging every sound in the urban symphony around him. His dark, intelligent eyes held a focus that was almost human in its intensity. The call had come in 47 minutes ago, crackling through the secure radio frequency that connected Phoenix's Joint Terrorism Task Force to every law enforcement agency in the valley. An anonymous tip, the voice distorted by electronic scramblers, claiming knowledge of an explosive device somewhere in the downtown corridor. The caller had been specific enough to be credible, but vague enough to turn the entire city center into a potential crime scene. Agent Sarah Chen, the FBI's lead coordinator for the task force, approached with the brisk efficiency of someone who had learned to function on 3 hours of sleep and pure caffeine. She was a small woman, barely 5'4", but she carried herself with the kind of authority that made seasoned cops twice her size listen when she spoke. Her black hair was pulled back in a severe ponytail, and her dark eyes held the sharp intelligence of someone who had spent years learning to think like the worst kinds of people. "Kane, we have a problem," she said, her voice cutting through the ambient noise of the awakening city. The tip was more specific than we initially thought. Our tech guys just finished analyzing the voice pattern and background audio from the call. They isolated traffic sounds, and the acoustic signature matches this intersection. She gestured toward the busy crossroads where Central Avenue met Washington Street, a confluence of urban arteries that carried thousands of people every hour. City buses lumbered through the intersection like massive steel whales, their diesel engines adding a bass note to the constant hum of traffic. Commuter trains whispered past on elevated tracks, and the sidewalks were already thick with pedestrians hurrying toward office buildings that stretched toward the desert sky like glass and steel monuments to human ambition. Kane studied the intersection, his trained mind automatically cataloging potential targets and threat vectors. The federal building where they stood was an obvious choice for any terrorist with a grudge against the government. But the sheer volume of civilian traffic presented equally attractive targets for someone whose goal was maximum carnage and media coverage. Rex sensed the change in his handler's posture, the subtle shift from alert readiness to active engagement. The dog's own body language transformed, his ears pricking forward, his nose beginning the constant sampling of air that would continue until the threat was neutralized or the mission was called off. "What kind of device are we looking for?" Kane asked, his voice carrying the flat professional tone that marked him as someone who had asked this question too many times before. Agent Chen consulted her tablet, scrolling through intelligence reports that painted an increasingly grim picture. Unknown composition, unknown size, unknown trigger mechanism. The caller claimed it was designed to maximize casualties during morning rush hour. That gives us maybe 90 minutes before this area hits peak density. Kane felt the familiar cold weight settle in his stomach, the sensation he had learned to recognize as his body preparing for the kind of work that most people couldn't imagine. 90 minutes to search an area that encompassed dozens of buildings, hundreds of vehicles, and thousands of potential hiding spots. It was a mathematical impossibility, which meant they needed to be smarter than the mathematics. He looked down at Rex, who was watching him with the kind of unwavering attention that spoke of absolute trust and professional readiness. This dog had worked with him through 3 deployments in Afghanistan, had detected improvised explosive devices that had saved countless American lives, and had never once failed to alert when explosives were present. If there was a bomb in this urban maze, Rex would find it. The partnership between a SEAL and his canine was something that went beyond mere training or professional cooperation. It was a bond forged in the crucible of shared danger, tempered by absolute mutual dependence, and refined through countless hours of working as a single, integrated unit. Kane trusted Rex's nose more than he trusted most humans, and Rex had learned to read Kane's intentions and emotions with an accuracy that bordered on telepathic. "We start with the most likely targets," Kane said, his mind already working through the tactical problem. "High-value, high-visibility locations first. Government buildings, transportation hubs, anywhere that would guarantee maximum media coverage and casualty count." But even as he spoke, he knew they were playing a guessing game against an opponent whose logic might be completely alien to their own assumptions. Terrorists didn't always choose the most obvious targets. Sometimes they preferred the unexpected, the symbolic, the personally meaningful. Sometimes they were brilliant strategic thinkers, and sometimes they were simply angry people with access to explosives and a death wish. Agent Chen was coordinating with the Phoenix Police Department, establishing a perimeter that would allow them to work while maintaining the illusion of normalcy. Panic was the enemy in situations like this. Mass evacuation would not only alert the bomber that his device had been discovered, but would also create the kind of chaos that could trigger a dead man switch or simply provide cover for additional attacks. The morning sun climbed higher, and the heat began its daily assault on everything and everyone foolish enough to venture into the Sonoran Desert's urban heart. Kane checked his equipment one final time. The portable explosive detection kit, the tactical radio, the sidearm that he hoped he wouldn't need but had learned never to leave behind. Rex stood up, shaking himself once in the economical way that dogs use to signal readiness for action. His nose was already working, sampling the complex bouquet of urban scents that most humans couldn't even detect, much less interpret. Kane clipped the long training lead to Rex's tactical harness, a piece of equipment that identified him as a working military dog, and gave Kane the control he needed to direct their search pattern. The harness was worn and familiar, marked with the kind of small tears and stains that spoke of serious work in dangerous places. "Ready to work, boy," Kane said quietly, using the simple phrase that transformed Rex from a patient companion into a precision instrument of detection and alert. Rex's tail gave a single, controlled wag, and his eyes locked onto Kane's face with the kind of focused attention that meant business. They were no longer a man and a dog standing on a city street. They were a weapons system, activated and ready to engage the most deadly game of hide-and-seek either of them had ever played. The first sweep would be systematic, methodical, and utterly thorough. Kane led Rex toward the central bus terminal, a sprawling concrete and glass structure that served as the nervous system for Phoenix's public transportation network. Thousands of commuters flowed through its arteries every hour, making it the kind of target that would appeal to someone whose goal was maximum destruction and minimum escape time. Rex moved with the fluid grace of a predator, his nose low to the ground, working in the zigzag pattern that Kane had drilled into him through countless training exercises. The dog's breathing was controlled, his movements economical in the desert heat that was already climbing toward triple digits. His nostrils flared constantly, processing the complex chemical symphony that rose from the superheated pavement. The bus terminal was a maze of diesel fumes, human sweat, cleaning chemicals, and the 1,000 other scents that accumulated in any space where large numbers of people gathered daily. To a human nose, it was simply the smell of public transportation. To Rex, it was a detailed map of everyone who had passed through in the last several hours, complete with emotional states, medical conditions, and dietary choices. Kane watched his partner work, reading the subtle signs that most people would never notice. The way Rex's ears moved indicated he was isolating specific scents from the background noise. The angle of his head showed which direction held his interest. The rhythm of his breathing told Kane whether they were getting warmer or colder in their search for the deadly needle in this urban haystack. Agent Chen's voice crackled through Kane's earpiece, providing updates from the command post they had established in a surveillance van parked 3 blocks away. Traffic analysis shows the heaviest flow will be between 9:15 and 9:45. That's when the second wave of commuters hits the streets. Plus, the tourist buses start running their downtown routes. Kane acknowledged with a brief click of his radio transmitter, unwilling to break the concentration that both he and Rex needed to maintain. They had cleared the main terminal building and were now working their way through the outdoor platform areas where buses loaded and unloaded passengers in a constant cycle of organized chaos. It was here that Rex gave his first alert. The German Shepherd stopped mid-stride, his entire body going rigid in the way that Kane had learned to recognize as the preliminary phase of a positive detection. Rex's head turned toward a massive city bus that was idling in bay number 7, its diesel engine rumbling like a mechanical heartbeat. The bus was one of the newer models, painted in Phoenix's distinctive orange and blue livery, its destination sign reading Central Phoenix Loop, Express Service. Kane felt his pulse quicken, but his training kept his movements calm and deliberate. He couldn't afford to show any sign of alarm that might alert potential observers or panic the civilians who continued to board and exit buses around them. Rex was still in the preliminary phase, which meant he had detected something worth investigating, but hadn't yet confirmed the presence of explosives. The dog began to work more intensively, his nose tracking along an invisible scent cone that led from the platform toward the bus. Kane followed at the regulation distance, his eyes scanning the vehicle and the people around it for any sign of suspicious behavior or unusual activity. The bus driver was a middle-aged Hispanic woman whose name tag read Maria Santos. She had the tired but competent look of someone who had been navigating city streets for years, her hands steady on the wheel despite the stress that came with managing a 40-foot vehicle through downtown traffic. Passengers were boarding through the rear door while others exited through the front, the normal flow of urban public transportation continuing its ancient dance. Rex's alert intensified. His body language shifted into what Kane recognized as Phase 2 of the detection protocol. The dog's nose was now locked onto a specific target area, his breathing becoming more rapid and focused. He was no longer searching. He was confirming. Kane activated his radio with a discreet hand signal, speaking in the calm, measured tone that his training had drilled into him for exactly this kind of situation. "Command, this is Kane. Rex is showing strong interest in bus number 479 at platform 7. Requesting immediate technical support and evacuation protocols." Agent Chen's response was immediate and professional. "Copy that, Kane. Technical team is en route. Do not approach the vehicle until we have full spectrum analysis. Evacuation teams are standing by." But even as the words came through his earpiece, Kane knew they had a problem. The bus was scheduled to depart in less than 3 minutes, and there were still passengers boarding. If there was indeed an explosive device on that vehicle, it was about to carry that device and dozens of innocent people directly into the heart of downtown Phoenix's morning rush hour. Rex had moved into Phase 3 of his alert sequence. The dog was now sitting, his gaze fixed unwaveringly on a specific section of the bus's undercarriage near the rear axle assembly. His tail was motionless, his breathing controlled, his entire being focused on the invisible threat that his extraordinary senses had detected. In those final seconds before the bomb squad arrived, as Rex held his unwavering alert on the device hidden beneath tons of rolling steel, Marcus Kane understood something profound about the bond between warrior and partner. It wasn't just training or instinct that had brought them to this moment of triumph over terror. It was trust, forged in the crucible of shared purpose, a partnership that turned an impossible search into a life-saving victory. Today, Rex's extraordinary nose had once again proven that sometimes the most advanced technology walks on 4 legs and answers to a simple command: "Good boy."